Okay, hello everyone. Welcome back. We're just tuning in, recording after Lily and I have just been go go go, both of us. And so this is the first time we're recording an episode just the two of us. Just the two of us in a while. And so I feel like we're both really excited to be here and just catch up. We've been saving this convo for the pod because I was like telling Lily, anyways, we're going to talk about her trip to Alaska. And I was telling her, don't tell me too much because I want to hear it live.
Oh my gosh, totally. Yeah, we've both been traveling. Jess has been traveling, so have I. We've had fun trips. And yeah, you're totally right. I'm so excited to be here. I was like, we haven't done a episode just together in a while. So it's just fun to go back and forth around these current life updates. But I think that you guys are going to get a ton out of this because there's just so much that we can share when it comes to recent events, I think, in our lives. So I'm really excited to dive into Alaska. I know Jess has some updates too. So Jess, what do you want to start off with today? What's been up?
Okay. Life update. For those of you who follow me on Instagram, you probably know, but I just went to EDC. So EDC is this massive rave in Las Vegas, and I feel like I'm still recovering. I've been home for a week, and when you go to raves, you just like don't sleep, and it's 3 nights of basically not sleeping. I mean, we slept during the day, but it still throws your circadian rhythm off, and it's just like a lot. And anyways, I was just like really so my boyfriend is a raver. Okay. He is like ride or die, super passionate about raving. And I am just not. and and that's okay. And sometimes I feel like you do things in a relationship to, spend time with that person. And just like a really big lesson that I've been learning is that where my boundaries are with things. And I think the topic of like having separate interests in a relationship is something that's really interesting. And yeah, it's been something I've been exploring, is like going to raves with him and kind of learning where my boundaries are with that. And so it's just been really interesting because I basically like have come out of it, and I looked at him yesterday and I was like, babe, I'm sorry. I love you so much. I will never be a raver. He was like, baby, that's okay. You don't have to be a raver. But it was still so much fun. Like it was definitely an amazing experience. And the group that we had, it's really like, I think my biggest takeaway was just like, it's not about what you do, but it's who you do it with. Because the group that we were with it was just so much fun. We just all were really vibing together. And yeah, so I'm just kind of still riding the wave of that. And again, I had so much fun, but I'm like really ready to settle back into my life and get back into the groove of things, get back into my astrology, the podcast, all the things.
Yeah. Wow. I would have literally so much anxiety going to a rave, not because of the people, but because of the lack of sleep. Even the idea of not being able to sleep all night would throw me off, like totally. So
Dude,
I
yeah.
mean, yeah, I think for that alone, it's just not. I think I'm in the same camp as you in terms of like not being a raver, simply because of the sleep component. If you're listening and you know me, you probably know that I really value my sleep. I really do. And yeah, that unfortunately for me, sometimes that eliminates certain activities that I just don't merge with, that just aren't in my lane. And I've made peace with that at this point in my life. At 28 years old, I've made peace. I've made peace with that. If sleep isn't upheld, usually I just feel like so bad. So I know some people are fine with it though. Like some people just don't like, they just don't need it as much. I just do. So that's where I'm at with that. But
Well, and that's also a thing, you know, especially between women and men. I mean, it's like scientifically proven that women need more sleep than men, and that's something that just comes up a lot in my my relationship because my boyfriend sleeps literally like 5 5 hours a night, sometimes less, and he's like fully functioning. And I sleep 10 hours a night usually, and I'm always tired.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely true. Like my dad is the same way. Like my dad will just kind of like get, 4 or 5 hours and then he'll like take a little nap here or there, but it's not like this big deal. But like for me, like it is a big deal. And I used to be, I think when I was back like in my like pushing area in college when I was like in fight or flight a lot of the time and just not really taking care of myself that much. Having a ton of fun though. Um, I didn't really need that much sleep either. And I was like so prideful of myself in that way. And then like the next 4 years were like me catching up for all of that. Literally.
I feel that. I think just coming out of fight or flight in general, you need so much sleep. And that is something cuz yeah, I have come out of a few years ago. I've been out of fight or flight for like 2 years now, but I was definitely in it for like 5 years. And I just there were some days where actually there was a period of time where I was sleeping like 13 to 14 hours a night pretty consistently. And
Wow.
yeah. Yeah, it was like I was waking up at like 11 a.m. Like
Wow.
that and going to bed like early. And my boyfriend was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "I think it's like I think it's cuz I'm like coming out of fight or flight." And so anyways, that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, sleep is definitely something that's what I was telling him. I was like, "I could do a rave with you every now and then, but like one night." And
Mm.
you know, EDC is like the probably it's like the most intense rave that you could go to because they don't always all go till 6 a.m. but EDC goes till 6 a.m. every single night. And so anyways, I was like, yeah, this just, you know, health is a big value for me and I just can't hang with not sleeping that much. But it was super fun. It was definitely an experience. So here we are back to the you know, back to the grind. And so just giving a little life update, but we're going to shift a little bit into Lily's life updates because she just got back from Alaska.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
And that's going to actually be the main focal point of what we're talking about today because um I just know that this was a very transformative trip for you. I know you've been getting a lot of guidance around Alaska in general. So why don't we just start there? Like tell us about when you started getting nudges to go to Alaska.
Yeah, thanks, Jess. I've been so excited to talk about this on the podcast and I actually like all through my time in Alaska, I was trying to take notes and really like have have these things to share because when we do these kinds of experiences, sometimes it's like notes in the moment can be really helpful. So I definitely was taking notes and yeah, you're right. It was a huge experience. I'm excited to talk about it today. But yeah, thinking way back when I started getting nudges for Alaska, the first thing that I wanted to bring up around this was actually like the idea of being called to places. And I'm actually one of those people that has felt this from a very young age. And I know some people have like more of a connection to place, other people don't really have super strong connections to place, but I'm definitely one of those people that's always had a really strong connection to place and always felt called specific places. And I think when I was like in high school, college, I really felt called to like the Western United States. Like I really wanted to go to Colorado. I went there. That ended up being like a Pluto line experience needed. And yeah, so since I was, I guess, in my like high school, college years, I've always felt really called to places. I actually got made fun of for feeling so strongly in that way. And I feel like that's when you know that you've like hit on something important is when someone who's not having their best day or maybe just not at your level like makes fun of you for something that you're so passionate about. That's actually usually like a big green flag that like you're on something. And for me that definitely was true. But in terms of Alaska, when this all started when I was literally in my adolescent. Like I can't really remember the age, but I've always been really intrigued by Alaska. And I ended up reading this book. I don't know if any of you guys have read it, but it's called Looking for Alaska by John Green. He wrote The Fault in Our Stars too.
Oh my God. Johnny is obsessed with that book, The Fault in Our Stars.
The Fault in
But
Our Stars. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So John Green is a really famous young adult author, and he wrote The Fault in Our Stars, An Abundance of Catherines, Looking for Alaska, and like a few others. And I was obsessed with this book, Looking for Alaska. I have my own copy. I still have it at my parents' house. Like it's
Wait,
still there.
can I ask, wait, is it like a fiction book
Yeah.
or okay.
Yeah. It's fiction. And the girl in the book, her name is Alaska. And to me, like there was something about that, like her name being Alaska. Like I was like, this is the coolest book ever. Like I love this. And I don't know why I just love the word Alaska. Like, I think it's a really beautiful word. And her name is like she's like very much a badass in the book too, so that helps.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was really obsessed with this book, Looking for Alaska, and I was just really always intrigued by the name of Alaska. And so that was like back, back a long time ago. But I continue to kind of get pings like throughout my life up until this point. Like one time I was on a plane and I ended up sitting next to this guy who was from Alaska. I was on my way to Idaho. He's from Alaska. And it was one of those situations where like he really hit it off with someone like on a plane. Like I usually don't talk to the people next to me that much, but like with him, we like really hit it off. And he ended up giving me a hat that just said Alaska on it. And so I got off the plane like wearing my hat. My boyfriend picks me up and he's like, "Where'd you get the hat?" Like I was not in Alaska. Like I was not there. And I just come back like adorned with Alaska things. Yeah, so that was just kind of funny. But then other little synchronistic things like happened around Alaska Airlines, got won a big thing with Alaska Airlines, just like these little things. And I was like, okay, I really feel like this is a call for me. As I said, for the majority of my life. But then this year I was like, okay, I think this is an actual like I'm starting to recognize it as like a calling to that place versus just these kind of random events. And so it was really this year that I was like, yeah, I want to go and I'm going to find a way to get there. And so I was kind of like looking through different avenues and thinking through, okay, like how do I get there? When do I go? And this opportunity to go on this cruise with my family literally just like popped up out of nowhere. My brother planned it. And it was just one of those things where it was just like, oh. And so eventually I like hopped on that train with my family and we went. And this was mid-May. So this is super recent. So when this episode releases in about like 2 weeks, it'll still be really, really fresh for me, the whole experience.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I know that you were telling me about like I had no idea that your brother had been the one to plan it, and it's like that idea of, you got invited, and I think that that's something that is big, and that's something that, we had Kerry Ferber on recently, and she shared with us, around grid working. She's like, when you get invited places like weddings, for example, you're being invited to grid work there, and you don't have to do it consciously. Like grid working, you can literally just go, you just go, and your energy basically, you know, does what it needs to the land that it's on. So I feel like that was definitely important, was the fact that you were invited. I feel like it was kind of the universe being like, yo, you got to come here like now.
Oh my gosh, I never even thought about it like that with like the invitation, but it totally was. It was like one of those things where it was like I was trying to figure it out myself. I like almost went to do a house sit there and I was like talking to Jess about this. I backed out of the house sit, just didn't feel right. And then yeah, my brother was like randomly we're on the phone and he was like, "Yeah, like I got this cruise to Alaska for our parents and I'm going too. You should come." And I was like, "What?" Like and he didn't know that I was like thinking about going to Alaska. Like he didn't know I was like feeling this way. And then he was just like, yeah, like bought this cruise to Alaska for our parents for Christmas, and I'm going too. You should come. I'm like, oh.
And
And honestly, sorry, go ahead.
well, something that's really interesting about that is that you were, because I remember when you were trying to book your own trip and anyways it didn't work out, you actually ended up deciding no. But then you mentioned very briefly to me when we were talking, you were like, yeah, there's a significance about me entering the land via the water. And so I think that if you want to maybe touch on that a little bit, because I just feel like it's no coincidence that like your brother booked a trip there and it was a cruise, not just a regular trip flying in.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, you're right. I really was feeling when I was like tuning in beforehand to the Alaska grid and just like the trip, I really felt like flying into Alaska was like not the thing. And I had so many, I can't even tell you how many dreams I had about Alaska, but I've had so many dreams about Alaska, and each time I was either driving, I was mostly driving there. And the thing was, I would know when I was in Alaska because it would be all light. Like there would be no, I would be like, oh, it should be dark by now. It should be nighttime. And it was just light because it's so northern. And so in the summer, it's all light. And in the winter, it's all dark. And I would always know when I made it to Alaska because I was seeing the light. And that's like very interwoven into my actual experience there. But yeah, there was very much something around actually like crossing the border of Alaska, like via my own 2 feet versus like flying over it and like dropping down into like Anchorage, which is a little more inland. I mean, Anchorage does have like ports and stuff, but there was just something about like the journey to Alaska. And that's what the cruise did for me. And I was like, okay, wow, like never thought I would be a cruise person too. I mean, that was another huge surprise. I was like kind of judgy about cruises. I don't know why, but I was just like, I don't know, like that's like not my thing. Like I guess I just thought it was more so this like party scene, people just like eating a lot, drinking a lot, like chilling, and I'm usually like not that way. So I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like this. I loved the cruise. I loved it. There was just something so easy about it, something so magical about like being on a voyage with all of these other people, like no turning back. We're going. And it was just so unique. So I just loved it.
Yeah, what was that like in terms of like I'm just curious, did you feel like you were on like a vacation? Did it feel like how did it feel in terms of like the actual cruise aspect? And was the food good? Was there sorry, that was Jax. Was there like entertainment? I'm just a little curious into that.
Yeah. So you said you've been on a cruise, right? Before?
I've been on a cruise. I was like 11. And so my parents would always drop me and my brother off at the kids center and go like
Oh.
drink and have fun. Literally, like I just remember playing in the kids center a lot. And then also me and my brother both got sick. And my brother actually threw up at dinner when we were at dinner in the wine bucket because um he swallowed salt water from the pool and then I threw up later that night, but luckily I made it home. So anyways, those are like my memories of the cruise.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'll say mine was a little different. I wasn't in the kids section. You know, I've graduated past that at this point. But yeah, I mean, the cruise was just like so fun. It was so fun. We had unlimited food, so you could just like go eat. You didn't have to do your dishes. You didn't have to even order. Like there was like cafeteria style, but then there was really nice restaurants. The food was good. I'm gluten free, so they could accommodate that, which was awesome. And mostly like what the cruise felt like to me was like this like voyage. Like it really was. Like it was like this adventure. And the people who were like running the cruise, like the captain and the cruise director, were really involved in the experience, which I loved. Like the captain would like come on the intercom and be like, "This is where we're approaching." And I was like, "Oh my God, this is so cool." And then in our room, we also had this little TV that they gave us. The movies were bomb. You know, usually when they give you free TV, it's like the movies suck. The movies were great. And we had this thing called the bow cam, which basically like it was a 24-hour camera to the ocean of like where you were going. So even when you were like falling asleep at night, like you could look out and you could see the water and like the ocean. And I thought that was so amazing. I just thought that was so cool. So
Wow.
yeah, there was just like all these little magical things about it. And the cruise director was hilarious. We went to a bunch of shows and he like opened the shows and then closed them down and just kind of gave us like the itinerary for the next day. Each day was different. So every day we were a different port, and there was so much to do and explore at the ports. Like a lot of people would do excursions. So my family did too. Like I did it as well. So you would kind of get yourself ready to get to your excursion when you got on land. And then, for example, like I went on a rainforest hike, and then my partner and I did like a salmon bake one day, and then we also went to a glacier. So there was all these things to do on land, but it was kind of this magical like preparation that was happening on the cruise for when you got on land that just built the excitement so much. Not to mention that, I mean, the facilities on the cruise were so fun. Like they had a workout area, obviously, which I only used one time. I was just like so busy doing other things. But then they also had these shows. So one of them was this like beautiful acrobatic experience that we got to see. It was these two, they were a couple actually. And it reminds me of your dance, honestly. Like it was so intimate. So it was truly like, out of this world beautiful. They had like these ropes and these ribbons that they would like put around themselves and like really just hoist themselves into the air. I mean, the level of strength was insane. The final day of the cruise, we were supposed to see a Cirque du Soleil, but I was telling Jess there was a ton of, I'll say, turbulence on the
Oh,
ship. Ton of turbulence.
I'm so freaked out by this. Like I don't know why. I think it's because that's probably like one of my worst fears is being out at sea and being like swallowed by a storm.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I thought that Titanic would be banned on the ship, but it wasn't actually. There was like some like game shows that were like, what was said in the Titanic movie? And I'm like, wow, it's not banned. Anyway, yeah, it was crazy. So most of the cruise was in this area of the ocean called the Inside Passage, which actually has land on either side of it. So it wasn't that rough. Like it was pretty easy to deal with. But the final day of the cruise, we were cruising from Skagway, Alaska, and we were shooting over to Anchorage, which was actually the longest stretch of cruise all in like one evening. So we were like pushing it in terms of the timing. And at that point, we were on totally open ocean. And I remember the captain, he was like, okay, everyone, coming up, we are going to be in the Gulf of Alaska and the weather isn't going to be great. So it's time for everybody to get their sea legs. And we're like, we're kind of excited. We're like, all right, like it's getting juicy, you know? But then we're like, holy shit. Like, I mean, they closed down the pool. The pool on the deck was roiling. It looked like a wave pool. It was like crashing. It was insane. And my dad got really sick. I did not get super sick. I'll say I did not feel well at all, but I didn't take Dramamine. Like I didn't need, I wasn't like gonna puke. I just felt bad, you know? But it was legit. And my parents were in the front. I don't know if you remember like where you stayed, Jess, but my partner and I like stayed midship. And then my parents were like literally in the front of the boat, like on the bow, and they could just feel every wave just like hitting their wall. And I was like, you guys can sleep in our room because we had an extra bed in our room. I'm like, you guys should just sleep in our room because that's insane. Like, you can't sleep there. It ended up calming down later in the night, but it was an experience. It was an experience. Like, you could feel the power of the ocean. Like, you could feel it. It was an experience.
I mean, was there any point where you were like scared that the ship was going to go down?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't like legitimately scared of that. I was just like, I get like really excited during storms, like thunderstorms and stuff. So I was just like, do you think that this vessel can take this level of turbulence in the water? I don't think turbulence is the word. I think that's for airplanes, but I don't know how else to describe it.
I'm like, there are two types of people. Lily, who's like, how much can we take? And then me who's like, fuck, literally.
Oh my God. There was like literally 80-year-old people on this cruise walking around. I could barely walk around. I was running into stuff. Like it was to the point you couldn't walk in a straight line. And there was like 80-year-old people just like walking around. And I'm like, are you guys like seasoned cruisers? They have to be, because I was so impressed. Me and my brother were just like,
Oh my
what
gosh.
is
Cruising must
like,
be
I
their
mean,
lifestyle.
yeah, I was like, these people must be like used to this kind of like wave action, because it was definitely different on the Fanox side of things. We were all like, okay, we're in this.
He freaking out. I mean, anyways, that yeah, I'm a wimp when it comes to that kind of those kinds of things.
Wait, so where did you cruise that was so like chill?
I think it was somewhere in the Caribbean.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes sense.
And it was a while ago, so
Right.
but yeah, and it was not super wild by any means. We didn't have that type of experience, but yeah, that's just so interesting. And yeah, so it sounds like the experience overall though was like super magical and just really had that like yeah, that like magical feel to it, which I could totally see, and especially with a cruise. And
Mhm.
so I'm curious about kind of like what your biggest takeaway was in terms of, I don't know, just the experience as a whole. Just like take us a little deeper into the spiritual side of things, because I'm sure it was a very
Mhm.
spiritual experience for you as well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, like the cruise itself, I think was really important, because my brother was saying this too. He was like, this is a no hassle vacation. And I've never ever done that before. I've never gotten on a cruise ship and it just takes you, like it just takes, like, I don't have to effort. I don't have to effort. And I feel like I really felt like this went back to kind of what we were talking about on the True Sky Astrology episode. So if you haven't tuned into those, definitely tune into those, around me going from this Aries embodiment to this Pisces embodiment, and just like the flow of the ocean. I just I felt like it was really significant for me in that way. Like starting
Mhm.
off my 28th year, because I turned 28 in April, and moving into it felt connected. It did. And
Oh my God, yeah.
and yet there was still this, it was so like Leo too. Like it really had this like heart, like connection, and Aries too, because it was like very much like a voyage and an adventure. I remember like taking off from port, and I was just like, my brother was with me, and like his girlfriend and my boyfriend were here, and I'm like, there's no turning back, we're in this. Like it was just so fun. Like it was so fun to be in that with family. And that was like one of my huge takeaways from this trip, was how much fun it was, like how much joy, laughter. I mean, I haven't experienced that with my family in quite some time. And it just, it felt like carefree magic every day. And just like the amount of laughter and just jokes and fun, and also awe the whole time. I mean, it was, if you've ever been to Alaska, you'll know Alaska is powerful. Like it is a powerful landscape. And one of the things that I was feeling around it spiritually was this divine masculine presence, this constance. And I couldn't grasp that word until it actually came to me through these earrings I'm wearing. These earrings are little forget me nots. That's the state flower. And on the back of the earrings, it kind of showed, or on the paper that they were with, it kind of gave a little description of why Alaska state flower is the forget me not. And it's because of their constance and perseverance. And that's what I really felt from the landscape, like this
Mm.
deep constance. It's so wild and it's so beautiful and it's so extreme. And all of those things are just so present and unapologetic. It's just, it almost feels like sensory overload, because like as we were cruising through the glaciers and just meandering down, it just, it felt not real in a way. It was just so grand. So that was definitely a takeaway. And also for me, so when we were approaching Alaska, we had kind of a day where we were at sea, but we hadn't reached actual Alaska yet. I tuned in. I was in my cabin, and I tuned in kind of in meditation. I was laying down and I tuned into Alaska as we were approaching, and something that had continuously come through before was this feeling of home for me, like spiritually around Alaska. But then also when I was tuning in, I saw that it was matching my aura. And my aura, a lot of times what I see for myself is purple. And it was purple too. And there was this aspect when I was there of like being matched and being so seen, almost like obviously Alaska isn't my twin flame, but it's kind of like what you describe, what people describe as a twin flame, where it's just being seen exactly as you are by like a direct mirror. And something that I felt so free, like the freedom that that gave me in Alaska, it truly felt like I was just me without trying. It was like almost just like every little layer of whatever just fell away, and it was just me. And the term that kept coming to me was me in like bright relief, almost like me on like a black backdrop, like fully in the spotlight and without even trying. Like
Mhm.
it was just a match. And I've never felt that with a place before.
Yeah, and it really sounds like the overall, based on what you just shared, and you shared something earlier too, is this like theme and feeling of just ease, like pure ease. And I think that that is something that is like so powerful, so beautiful, and obviously something that I always want in my life 24/7. But
Totally.
wow, okay, so this is really, really cool and very interesting. I feel like it almost I feel like speak a little bit, or if you can speak to just how it deepened your connection with the earth, because obviously listeners know now, our listeners know now about your connection to the earth, both through, your job, but also spiritually, energetically. I'm curious how this influenced or impacted your connection to the earth.
Yeah. I think that overall, what it did, and actually, this is a great time to share this part. So, when I was flying home, I pulled a card and it was the Gemini card, and something really, and it's the astrology deck that we have. And
Mm.
something that really struck me was one of the sentences. It said, "There is great power in lightening your connection to the earth." And Gemini is like this very playful sign. It's like really, I don't really know Gemini energy that much. I don't really have much of it in my chart, but we're in tropical Gemini right now, and we're going to be moving into Gemini season when it comes to the true sky system. I don't know exactly when, Jess would know. But that, like, I kind of went into it like, okay, do I need to be doing anything here? Like, do I need to be doing grid working? And it really just felt like this was my chance to just really receive from the earth, from my life. Like, it almost brings tears to my eyes because uh, I've just been in quite a healing journey for like the last couple of years, and I'm totally in a different life now.
Mhm.
And going to Alaska was like, it felt like that. Like, it felt like I was finally ready and able to just enjoy my life and like receive my life. And I didn't have to effort or do. And like that was just so freeing. And also just, yeah, like of course I was tuning in, like of course I was connecting, but it was like just enjoy your life. And
Mm.
that's something that just kept coming through for me, this like Leo energy, tons of confidence codes there, because it's like when you're fully yourself, like when you're spotlighted like that, and it's just tons of confidence, like confidence, confidence,
Mhm.
confidence just kept coming through for me. And I'll say one of the experiences that I had on one of the port days was in Juneau. And this was the place that I was able to actually lay down on the earth, which is something that I do often, and just kind of take it in, really ground. And something that I really received there, in like a more spiritual sense, and again, like around this divine masculine piece, was king energy, like these kings of the land that were there. It was like very much like castles and kings and this like nobility, valor, groundedness there. And I loved connecting with that. Like it truly like brought so much to my heart. And there was a beautiful waterfall there as well. But again, it was just like this receiving experience the whole time. And I've truly never really experienced that before in my life. And it felt so significant for me at this time as well.
Mhm. Wow, that's really amazing. I also just love that you brought astrology into this, of course. I love that, but
Yeah.
I keep thinking about your Leo moon because your Leo moon is in the ninth house, and the ninth house is the house of travel. And I feel like this was such an emotionally nourishing trip for you. And it's really interesting because there's like direct themes of Leo with the king energy, the valor energy that you were feeling. That is, Leo is a king, queen energy. I almost wonder if you have like a past life there or something, because it's just like there's so much, I feel like, that, and just the confidence that you were talking about, and just like the being who you are. Like, it sounds like it was just like bringing out all of you in such a way where it was like you didn't even have to try, is what you were saying, which I think is, oh man, that is just so Leo moon and in the ninth house. And then what you shared around Gemini was really interesting. I'm curious, what was your connection to the air there?
Mm. I mean, I live in a really unpolluted place, like in my daily life. So I think a lot of people, when they come out to Idaho, they're like, "Oh my gosh, like the air is just so clean." But I mean, the air was just like definitely really, really fresh and like really rejuvenating there as well. But I didn't really connect with it like in an intentional way. Like obviously, there's like Kerry shares this as well. Like there's air grids, there's water grids, there's land grids. I felt really connected to the land, mostly. I
Mhm.
felt like that's where my connection was a lot. And we actually, on the end of our trip, we did a train ride that was like a 4 hour train ride. And that was so cool. Like, that was when I really felt like things just like permeating me spiritually, and my well just like really filling. And when I got home, I truly felt like I was just full of magic. Like my body was just full of magic. And I was like, this is great. Like this is great. And yeah, I mean, totally the ninth house in Leo, like that, when you told me that in my reading, I was like, whoa. Because something you said your moon sign is really what you do for you. And that just hit so much for me. Like that hit so much. And it actually, this is something I actually wanted to mention too, is that this trip really reframed something that I feel in my heart is success for me, is being able, having the space, having the flexibility, building the life that allows me to do things like this consistently, not just once every 5 years, not once, not even once a year. Like I want to have a life, I want to build a life that allows me to experience this when it's aligned for me to experience it. And of course, like this isn't going to be, this kind of trip isn't something that you do every other month, but it's really what I realized is like that importance for me is so crucial to my life. And like that's what feels like success in my heart, is being able to experience places on the planet and go to where I'm called. Like there's just, it's everything to me. It's huge. And this trip really showed me what true joy. It's like I was like reconnected to my joy, and with my family and with myself and with Alaska. Yeah.
One thing that's really interesting too is that you have so many placements in the fourth house in your chart. And the fourth house is the house of family, and kind of going back to your roots and whatnot. And I feel like the fact that you were able to, step into this experience with your family, and it's also flavored by Pisces. And, you're talking about how you're starting off this new year of 28 on this trip, and it feels very aligned with Pisces, like literally, because you're on the ocean. Pisces is very, aligned with the ocean. And then the fact that you were able to like have this experience with your family there as well, I feel like, I mean, it just feels very reflective of your chart, which is so interesting.
I mean, it's no surprise. And I'll be honest, like I was like, "Oh, is this a line for me to go with my family?" I've been really excited about doing retreats this year, meeting kind of new people or more people that are kind of, I don't want to say different from my family, but just kind of expanding my network in that way, whether that be through podcast events or like retreats, things like that. And so I was kind of like thinking about like, okay, do I want to do this trip with my family? But it felt so, because obviously we have limits in terms of resources and time. And so you have to make these kinds of decisions around, okay, what is really going to fill me up in the best way? But when I just remember waking up one day and just laying in bed and thinking about it. And I just had this wave of ease and just peace.
So beautiful. Also, it sounds just like you and your family were able to kind of like reconnect in a way, in a new way. I mean, you mentioned earlier that there was like so much laughter and joy between all of you that you haven't felt in a really long time. So I think that that's really, really powerful. And it just sounds like it sounds like it all happened exactly as it was meant to. And the fact that there was so much ease in and throughout it, I feel like is very confirming of that, because as we know, the universe just hands you things when it's meant to be. So
Yeah. Oh, totally. And yeah, I think that the reconnection, like the fourth house piece, has been really important for me this year. I'm also in a 4-year in numerology. So yeah, I actually, after this trip, I have kind of a week and a half or so, and then I go to Canada, which is where I've been going with my family for my whole life. But that tradition has kind of fallen off in the last 5 years. And I think doing this trip with my family was so reinvigorating to that tradition. Even though it wasn't in Canada, even though it wasn't at the place that we usually are, it just, it was reinvigorating to that. And yeah, I think that there is a really strong connection to me with the fourth house aspects, like as you've said, obviously. Um, but yeah, and it wasn't a decision that I made overnight either, but in terms of going, because it definitely was something that was like totally new to me. But I'm so glad I did, and I will be back. Like I will go back there for sure. That's definitely a place that is one of my core places that I feel within myself.
yeah, it definitely does not sound like your time with that land is over.
Yeah, no.
Well, okay, so this is all really, really inspiring and just making me think about certain pings I've been having to certain land areas. I'm curious, how has this trip, you know, helped you? You've mentioned that it's helped you reframe your view of life in terms of what you want, travel goals, grid working. Can you share a little bit around that?
Yeah, totally. So, well, as I said, I've been kind of called to places like my whole life, and I'm just realizing that I want to experience that level of joy more often in my life. And that doesn't mean that I have to go to an exotic place, right? That doesn't mean that. But it does mean that I know that that kind of experience is what really fills me. And as I was kind of saying prior, like I want to create and build a life that allows me to do that. That allows me to go after that joy. And I think that that permission slip that I'm giving myself and like really reconnecting back to my joy is really what I'm being like asked. It's what's being asked of me right now. And I think that I kind of bump up a lot around, can I do this? Can I, is this responsible? Right? Like I kind of bump up against that. But going on this trip, it really just helped to ground in this knowing that I have that this is a part of my mission. Like a part of my mission is to be in my joy, and it is to walk around this planet and go to the places that I'm called. And that's what it is for me. And again, like as I was kind of saying previously, that's something that when I think about success, like success for me is my ability to do that, along with other things, right? Along with the things I'm building, along with whatever it is, there's more tangible things, but success for me is having that time, that space, and going for it, doing it, and getting there. And what I love about my relationship with land and with grid working that has really evolved over the last, I would say, like 1 to 2 years, is that it doesn't overwhelm me. It's not like I need to go to a million places all the time. When I'm called somewhere, I know. And that's what makes it so beautiful and exciting for me, because it's like, okay, where next? And it feels so, it lights me up. It fills me. It fills me. And a lot of people, I think, get really exhausted by travel. And I feel that, in the beginning of the trip, I was like, oh, okay, this has been a push to get here. And so that's a very realistic thing when it comes to travel. But coming home, I think, is so telling, because it's like, do you feel revived? Do you feel replenished? Or do you feel drained? And then but for me, I felt my boyfriend asked me this. He was like, what do you feel like you need to like be your best self? And I literally said, I was like, Alaska gave me all I need right now. Like Alaska gave that to me. And how amazing, that you can go somewhere and really be filled in that way. That's where I really experience my spirituality. I'm realizing more and more.
Wow. That's really profound, honestly. I'm just like, oh my gosh. Like this trip, I didn't realize how impactful it would be for you. I knew you were really excited about it. And I knew, obviously, like it was something that you had been wanting to do. And you had like mentioned it multiple times. And so it's just really, really inspiring to hear how much it impacted you and how much it revived you. And I think it's definitely something I'm very curious to see how you're going to continue to, like what you said, create the life that you want so that you can have more experiences like this. And so also I'm curious about there's like a note you mentioned about insights from Kerry. Can
Yeah.
can you talk about that?
Yeah. Yeah. So if you didn't listen to our episode, this will be 2 episodes prior with Kerry. She has a huge grid working mission, and Jess and I had her on the show, obviously, and she's just incredible. I work with her consistently, I would say, at this point in my life, and I touched base with her on Alaska. So when I was deciding to go to Alaska, I was kind of deciding with my partner, like, okay, is this something that we want to move forward with? And I talked to Kerry about these feelings that I was having around this trip. And she was like, this is something that you can do, like tap into the Alaska grid and see if the timing is correct. And if this is like a good, not like that any experience is bad, but if this is a way that it's helpful for you to move forward. And I remember I did this when I was on a little weekend away for my birthday, and I was on a dock and I like connected to the Alaska grid, and I just felt this like whoosh of visceral feeling. I actually immediately started crying, and it was just this feeling of home. And I just felt, I got up, walked to the edge of the dock, and it was just like, jump in. And I was like, okay. And so I bought the ticket that night. So that was just like, Kerry was really instrumental in kind of helping me navigate some of these things that I was feeling around this. And she's just so experienced when it comes to working with Gaia, and just so intuitive overall. She's just incredible. Additionally, something that Kerry said was I was going to be having these deja vu moments. And deja vu has been happening a lot for me. Like before Kerry was like telling me this, I was like, okay, that makes sense, because I've been having a lot of deja vu. And I think I did have deja vu. I ran across, again, another book that I had read as a kid, where I saw the cover. It was called Julie of the Wolves. I saw the cover and I was just like, I know this book. I don't remember anything about it, but I just knew it. So it's just like things like that I experienced when I was there. So the deja vu piece. And also, I didn't tell Carrie this. I really hope she listens to this, because this is so confirming for her. But these earrings, as I said, are the forget me not earrings. And the state flower for Alaska is forget-me-nots. And she was saying that like a big piece of my experience was going to be deja vu. And it just kind of like all tied together for me in terms of also like me and Alaska being matched and like this remembrance that I felt around who I am there. So, yeah, that's kind of what came through with Kerry. Also, this kind of match that I was feeling, I also saw this sign, I guess, when you're entering the Vancouver airport, which is where we took off for the cruise. And it just said perfect for you. And I remember Carrie saying something similar. She was like, maybe it's just a perfect thing. And then I just saw this sign that said perfect for you. And I kept getting this idea of like perfect, perfect, perfect. And then when I finally got there, I was like, oh, it is like a perfect match to my energy. Like our auras are similar. Like there is, it's just one, like we're kind of connected in a
Mm.
way. It's kind of hard to describe. But yeah, Carrie, if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen. She shares a lot around different places that we can go right now too. I won't spoil it, but she gives great insights around grid working.
Wow. Yeah. It's just so crazy to me how much Alaska felt just like home to you. Um, and I'm just like, it's just interesting how different, because different land areas, different places really do bring out different energies in us, and it's different for all of us. And so I think that that was just like so powerful for you. And I'm just kind of
Mhm.
like, I'm just kind of in awe right now. I'm just gonna be honest. I'm just kind of like, wow.
I know, same. I mean, yeah, I knew it would be a big experience, but I also was not like putting pressure on it. You know, like I
Yeah.
didn't want to go. And that's something that Jess actually helped me navigate in the beginning because I was feeling when I was thinking around going to Alaska on my own, I was like, oh, like I need to get there somehow. I'm gonna have this big like experience. Like I know it. I'm being called. Like I know. And Jess was helping me kind of navigate that. And she was like, yeah, just releasing the expectation around it, like this doesn't have to be work. And I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, because I always am trying to work. I'm always like in the work, you know? And what I really found in Alaska was like, no, like it doesn't have to be work. Like there's a lightness. And I feel like I really embrace that.
That's really interesting because I feel like you and I are very similar in that way, because for me too, I always feel like everything has to be work. And and when you were talking about, part of your mission here is to be in your joy. I was like, holy shit. I was like, same. And I was like feeling that, and I was like, I just feel like hearing your experience is like kind of priming me for some things, and I'm just like, wow, it's really inspiring, because it's we are so conditioned to, work so much instead of just being in the receiving of life, like you said, and being in the joy of life and being in the fun of life. And I think that it's like it shouldn't be so hard for us to access that, but for some reason, it's like, why is it so hard to get something like that that feels so good? Do you know what I mean? Or to allow ourselves to be in that. And
Mm.
so I just think that that's really inspiring for me. And I think that for anyone listening too, because it really is a part of like why we decided to be a human, I feel like, is to experience that part of life too. And everyone's going to feel it differently and experience it differently. And it sounds like this is just like really a way that it wants to come through for you.
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah. And after I got back, I was kind of like, okay, I just want to keep this energy going, you know?
Mhm.
And like there is like such an inspiration that I have to like continue being more in this joy. And I think as you were saying, I think it does come to a lot of conditioning, but also like maybe personality types. Like I'm definitely, even when it comes to my spiritual connection, like I feel like I sometimes I'm like, oh, I need to be doing this for the planet, or you know, like it can be carrying a lot. You know, you can carry a lot, and
Yeah.
I've been getting kind of pushed in hints that it's not. I'm not here. I'm not. I'm here for me too.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's I think it's about finding that balance, right? Because again, I think about the moon and in our astrology charts, and what I told you was like the moon sign is just for you. And I feel like this experience is very reflective of that. But then we can also look to other places of your chart where it's like, yeah, you are meant to be of service and your soul wants that. But it's like this balance between the two and of like figuring out like how does that want to come through? And I feel like that's really almost like kind of what you really unlocked in this through this trip. And it's different for everyone.
Yeah, it's balancing the masculine and feminine in a way, which is part of my Ophiuchus rising, you told me.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's a whole other can of worms that
Yeah.
we're gonna probably have to talk about because I feel like that's something, well, divine masculine energy that came through for me in a card pull today too. So
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
feel like that's maybe something that we'll need to touch on. But ooh, this was so like again, I'm kind of just like in awe. I'm not gonna lie. Um, okay, as we're like kind of wrapping up here, is there anything else that like wants to come through? Anything else that wants to be said around your experience? And also kind of like where are you at right now?
Yeah, thanks so much for all these questions, Jess. It's been so great to reflect on it and to just feel into the energy again uh, of the trip in like a more like speaking way. Even though I feel like I've really carried it back with me. I don't think there's anything else that I want to share. But in terms of where I am now, I actually am feeling like I'm also riding a wave, like similar to what you were saying in terms of like EDC. Like I definitely feel like I'm riding a wave, and I have some like other fun things that are coming up in terms of like I have a wedding coming up, and then I'm traveling back to Pennsylvania, and I'm going to Canada, and this it just and speaking of like the divine masculine stuff, I guess I will say this is something that I'm noticing is that when I really just allow my joy to like take me, I do get the things done. Like I get done what I need to get done. And uh it's interesting, but it's been true. And I think yeah, it is a balance, but for me what I've noticed is like allowing myself to be my joy, there will become I always have to trust. I always want to trust myself that if I'm really committed to living my life from my sacral authority, then I have to do it, and I can't force myself to only follow it in certain times. I think like the real mastery is allowing it to work even when it goes again, even when it's like, maybe I should be doing something else. Maybe I should be unpacking from Alaska, but really all I want to do right now is lay in the sun. Like I think there comes like a trust piece, a trust muscle where it's like, okay, if I want to lay in the sun right now, do I trust myself enough to do that? And
Mm.
then trust that I'll want to do the things that I need to do to get me in the right spot so that I can move forward on Tuesday or whatever it is with my life, And I feel like that's kind of where I'm at right now is like this like mastery kind of like development of like, okay, how do I really live from this place so that my whole life like feels like a creation and the discipline is easy because it's like natural, you
Mhm.
know? And I
Mhm.
think that I've been in a spot of kind of like navigating that for quite some time, but I have a lot of renewed energy for that now, like since Alaska. Um, yeah, it's fun. It's interesting. We'll see. It's an experiment, but yeah, haven't felt like unpacking, so I haven't, and we'll see when I do. I have gotten some other random things accomplished that I didn't even have on my list. So, we'll see, but this is what I'm going for right now.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so true. It kind of goes with like allowing yourself to live cyclically and letting yourself really just be in whatever season you're in, but they can be like shorter seasons.
Mhm.
Especially with the just not wanting to unpack. And I mean, I was kind of on that kick after EDC. I was like also really tired, but I was just like, I just don't want to do anything. And I'm still kind of coming out of that, I feel like I've been in this like bubble.
Yeah,
And
integration.
yeah, and because like for me, EDC was even there were a lot of activations for me at EDC just around like love and like love in a way of not just romantic love, but of being around people and being open to receive them for who they are and really seeing them exactly who they are without expectation and what you can receive out of that. So anyways, I just feel like every experience that we have in life can really offer us what we least expected it to. And so it sounds like, and Lily and I have just kind of been go a lot. Like, and she just mentioned she's going to be traveling a bit more. I'm not really. Oh, actually, I'm traveling. Yeah, I'm traveling coming up, and then my best friend's coming to visit me. So we both just kind of have a lot going on. But in the midst of that, like we're gonna bring it onto the podcast. Like we were talking about it, and we want to just like kind of share more of our lives with you guys, and just let this be a space for that. So you guys will have to let us know what you think, but we're going to wrap up. So thank you guys so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, reach out to us, let us know what you liked, and maybe share it with a friend.
See you guys in our next episode.